Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we're diving into an exciting scenario. What if Eren Yeager went back in time? Huge shout out to Isil'zha BLZ for the concept. His link is in the description, so go check out his work and show some love. If you're enjoying the content, make sure to hit that subscribe button and drop a like. It really helps out the channel and motivates me to bring you more amazing stories. Let's get into it. Ymir and Historia sat under the shade of the tree, Historia leaning against Ymir's shoulder while Ymir gently stroked her hair. It was late in the evening, and it would soon be time for them to head back to the barracks, or else face the consequences of breaking curfew. But for now, they simply enjoyed the quiet moment. Ymir glanced up at the branches, the leaves swaying slightly in the wind. It was hard to believe that there were only a few months left before graduation. The past 3 years had flown by, and yet so much had happened. After being friends for about a year, Ymir and Historia had slowly shifted into being something more. They weren't sure what to call it. They just greatly enjoyed each other's company. And one person who had indirectly helped them grow closer was Eren Yeager. Ymir didn't interact with him directly much anymore, but she still remembered the conversation they'd had after that fateful exercise gone wrong. Eren looked at Krista seriously. "Your bloodline is the true royal family." Krista's eyes widened. "What? But that means
Eren nudda.
you have a claim to the throne." Krista looked utterly shocked at this revelation. "So that's why." Ymir frowned. "Krista, could you give me and Eren a moment to speak privately?" Krista still looked dazed and nodded absently. "Oh."
Okowo.
Ymir also was shocked by this unexpected news about her friend, but did a better job of hiding it. She wanted at least a few answers out of Eren. After Krista left, Ymir looked at Eren carefully. "You say that your father told you all this?" Eren averted his gaze. "Yes. He came from the same place you came from." Ymir's eyes widened. "I see. Where is he now?" Eren grimaced. "He's dead." Ymir lowered her gaze and stared at the ground near Eren's feet. She was silent for a moment before speaking again. "That wasn't really an avalanche, was it?" Eren shook his head slowly. "No." Ymir once again fell into silence. Eren walked up to her and met her gaze. "As I said, I'll protect your secret, and I would greatly appreciate it if you would do the same for me." Ymir swallowed nervously. "Right?" Eren looked at her seriously. "In the meantime, would you do me a favor? Keep an eye on her. Make sure she's safe." Ymir nodded. "Can do." Eren let out a small smile. "Thanks." Eren then walked away, leaving Ymir alone with her buzzing thoughts. Ymir didn't know exactly what was going on, and something about Eren intimidated her, making her reluctant to press him for more answers. But she got the sense that he was someone she could trust. In the meantime, Ymir was more than happy to look after Krista, or rather, Historia. A few weeks after their conversation with Eren, Historia had confessed her real name to Ymir and talked about her past. Ymir had been very supportive, and the two grew even closer, which led them to where they were now, sitting under the shade of the tree next to each other, their fingers interlaced as they enjoyed the cool evening air. Historia shifted slightly, glancing up at Ymir. "Something wrong?" Ymir shook her head.
No.
"Just thinking." Ymir stroked Historia's hair. "You nervous about tomorrow's test?"
Historia strag.
"A little." "You?" Ymir smirked. "Not really. Just stay focused and you'll do fine, princess." Historia blushed at the nickname Ymir had given her, but still smiled. Seeing her smile made it all worth it. Ymir wasn't sure when she was going to tell Historia about her past. She knew she would have to come clean at some point. It was only fair. In the end, she decided that she would tell the truth about her past when Eren revealed himself. She didn't know when he would make his move, but with graduation approaching, it couldn't be too much longer. Ymir glanced back up at the sky and continued to stroke Historia's hair, savoring the peaceful moment. Armin walked next to Annie through the trees. It was Sunday morning, and they had a few hours of freedom. Most of the 104th members were very talkative and outgoing, while neither of them were as comfortable in group settings, and so tended to prefer spending time alone, at least until they started spending more time together, such as this morning in the forest next to the training grounds. Only a few more months until graduation. Armin had difficulty wrapping his mind around the idea. On one hand, it was exciting, as they would be able to go out and use what they had learned to good use. On the other hand, he'd become accustomed to life as a trainee, and moving forward into unfamiliar territory was a little scary. Armin could tell that Annie was also nervous, as she became more and more reserved as graduation got closer and closer, only ever letting her guard down around him. Most of the cadets seemed to have the same mixture of excitement and nervousness about graduation. The only ones who didn't were Mikasa, Eren, and Reiner. After the exercise where the thieves had appeared, the story about how Eren had risked his neck for his friends had spread like wildfire among the rest of the cadets, and his reputation only improved. Both he and Reiner became like big brother figures to the rest of the 104th, the strong leaders they could count on in times of trouble. Armin had pondered about the incident, as some details still didn't seem to add up. Eren's actions seemed too deliberate, almost as if he had planned it. But then, how could he have possibly known about the thieves ahead of time? While he felt like he was missing something, and that there was something Eren wasn't sharing, he ultimately decided to put it aside for now. As time passed, there seemed to be something in the air, something that brought people together, and not just as comrades and friends. The first people to pair up were Franz and Hannah, who, after much teasing, finally fessed up that they were together. Armin didn't know them very well, but he was happy for them, and hoped that they had a good future ahead of them, something which was hard to come by as a soldier. The next ones to pair up were actually Eren and Mikasa. It had caught Armin off guard, as one day Mikasa was suddenly in an unusually good mood, and she kept glancing at Eren throughout the day, even more than normal. That evening, Eren had told him that he had known about Mikasa's feelings for a while now, and wasn't sure what he should do. But after the incident with the thieves, he realized how lucky he was to still be alive, and decided that he was going to make the most of the time that he had. There would likely be struggles and hardships in the coming years, so it was best to enjoy the happier moments now while he still could. Plus, he wanted Mikasa to be happy, and so opened up to her feelings, determined to make the most of the here and now. As one of the more popular cadets, Eren's relationship with Mikasa gained a fair amount of gossip and attention, though nobody teased them about it when they were present. In Eren's case, it was because they respected him enough to let him be, and in Mikasa's case, it was because they knew how tough she was, and consequently didn't want to get on her bad side. Armin was happy for them, but he still felt something was slightly off about Eren. He knew that Eren loved Mikasa, but did it go as deep as Mikasa's love for him? Was he with her because he truly felt the same way? Or was it just because he wanted to make her happy? Perhaps it was a little of both? Armin wasn't sure, but he hoped things worked out for them. After what they had been through, surely they of all people deserved it. Eren and Mikasa's relationship had obviously not thrilled Jean, who was still trying to get over his unrequited affections for the young woman. But after Eren had saved his life during the exercise, he didn't resent Eren too much, though the two of them still got into friendly arguments almost every day. A few months after Eren and Mikasa got together, Armin noticed Ymir and Krista beginning to spend more time together as well, and he suspected that their relationship could be beyond just friendship. He wasn't sure, though, so he didn't tell anyone. And of course, he and Annie had a thing going as well. They kept it to themselves, and they didn't know what to call it. But after enough time had passed, Armin noticed a shift in Annie's attitude. At first, she talked with him just to humor him. Then she talked with him because she actually wanted to. At some point, Annie began initiating the conversations instead of him, and eventually it became an unspoken habit for them to go walking in the woods during the few moments of free time they were allowed. Sometimes they talked, and sometimes they just remained silent and enjoyed each other's company. Today, Armin was talking about the ocean. He was surprised that Annie had heard about it and wanted to share what he knew to her. Armin looked at her excitedly. It apparently covers a lot of the world's surface, and it's full of salt, so much that no one could ever take it all. Annie looked thoughtful. I've also heard that the air near the ocean is so clear, and the breezes are really nice as well. There's probably also different kinds of plants and animals both near and in the ocean. Armin looked interested. Really? That sounds neat. I hope someday we get to see it. Annie frowned. Yeah. Armin glanced back at her uncertainly. Annie had closed her eyes, and several tears were streaming down her face. Armin looked at her sadly. Annie, I know that you're... Annie shook her head.
No.
I'm not a good person. I wish I was... But Armin gently touched her arm, and all at once Annie kissed him. Armin pulled her in close and felt her tears on his face. This was also part of their routine. Around everyone else, Annie was as stoic as could be. But here, around him, she finally let her guard down. Her kisses were sweet and passionate, but she still cried every time. Armin didn't understand. Annie kept saying that she wasn't a good person, and no matter how Armin tried to persuade her otherwise, she still maintained her stance. Armin knew part of why she thought she was a bad person. One day, after getting him to swear that he would never tell anyone else, she had confessed about how she had abandoned her friend Marcel in order to save herself. She didn't go into detail, but Armin could understand why she felt horrible about it. There was something else, though, something she hadn't told him yet. He desperately wanted to know, and to reassure her that no matter what mistakes she had made in the past, she was still a good person at heart. But he was willing to wait and offer her what comfort he could in the meantime. Annie leaned against him, her lips still pressed against his, and he gently rubbed her back, her tears still falling onto his cheeks. Aside from a few torches lit here and there, the training grounds were completely dark. At a glance, it looked like everyone had turned in for the night, but there were two people who were still awake and sitting near the edge of the woods, their fingers interlaced and staring up at the stars. They knew if they were caught, they would be in trouble, but they were pretty sure they wouldn't be. Mikasa glanced at Eren, smiling softly. The past 3 years had brought many changes, some emotional and some physical. Eren was no longer a boy, but a young man, and Mikasa found that she couldn't stare at him for too long without starting to feel warm all over. Tonight, though, she noticed his gaze looked troubled. Something had been bothering him lately, and while she had ignored it at first, she decided to see if there was something wrong. She squeezed his hand. "Eren, you okay? You've been rather quiet lately." Eren looked at her, his face solemn. "Graduation is only a few months away, and after that, we'll be in the Scouts, facing the Titans again." Mikasa looked at him carefully. "Are you having second thoughts?" Eren shook his head. "No, but when Mom died, that hurt a lot. And I know that more people will have to die in order for us to take back Wall Maria. And some of them might even be the people we've gotten to know here." Eren began to look distraught. "But I don't want to go through that again. It was bad enough the first time." To her surprise, Mikasa realized Eren was crying, something she hadn't seen him do in years.
Eran whisperat.
"In my dreams, I see them dead. All the time with Mom, at least it's in the past, it's done. But with the others, I want to protect them, but I don't know if I can. And the thought that my dreams might become reality, that I'll fail them again, Mikasa embraced him and held him in her arms. "You can't expect to protect them all. You're only one person." Eren sniffed. "I know, and yet, it feels like I should." Mikasa pulled back and looked at Eren, her calm eyes staring back at his watery ones. "I can't promise that everything will be okay, but I can promise this. I will do everything in my power to protect them. And you're not alone." Eren smiled, and the next second leaned forward so that their lips met. No matter how often they did it, it still sent a thrill down her spine. She cupped his face in her hands, savoring the moment. Their kisses started calm, but before long Eren was lying on the ground and Mikasa was on top of him, her kisses becoming more eager. While her lips were still wrapped around his, she reached down and began to unbutton his uniform. She finished unbuttoning the uniform, exposing Eren's chest, before pulling back and looking at him uncertainly. She tried to go beyond kissing before, but during all of her previous attempts Eren would always stop her, saying he wasn't ready yet. But this time he wasn't saying anything. She gently touched his stomach, as if to ask permission. Eren's eyes gleamed, and he gave a barely perceptible nod. Suddenly feeling like there were butterflies in her stomach, she reached up and began unbuttoning her own uniform. A moment later, Eren began to help her, and they kissed again, their breathing becoming more and more heated. A few nights later, a very different meetup occurred farther away from the main grounds. Reiner, Bertolt, and Annie were sitting on a series of tree stumps, looking rather serious. Reiner looked at Annie. "So, how did it go?" Annie sighed. "Not too good. I ended up crawling around in the inner city sewers. There was this man in a black coat who was different from the others. He's skilled. I almost got caught. He might have seen my face. She closed her eyes. Even if I make it into the military police with him being there, there's a limit to what I can do. Reiner frowned. A limit, huh? Annie looked at Reiner uncertainly. Let's take the intel we've gathered until now and go back to Marley. It's already been more than 5 years since we got here. Whatever information we have, they'll welcome it. Reiner looked at her seriously. You really believe that? Annie didn't respond. With these results after 5 years, Marley's definitely going to be disappointed. Annie glanced away. Then what? What do we do? Reiner stood up. We destroy Wall Rose. Annie and Bertolt looked slightly shocked, but waited for him to elaborate. Reiner continued. Whether or not there's a promise of pacifism, it makes no difference to our plan to locate the founding Titan. When us trainees are gathered at Trost, the Survey Corps will be out on a scouting mission. The inside of the walls will fall into total chaos, and us trainees will also be forced to fight. We'll hide like that, and even if our bodies can't be found, there's no way people will think we're still alive. Reiner held his hands up. After that, we'll mix in with the refugees and enter the inner capital. Depending on the situation, we can carry on being soldiers too. Even if we don't make it into the top 10, we can still become local military police. The key is to be in a position where it's easy to follow the king's movements. Annie grimaced. Many of your friends will die, though. They might all die. Reiner knelt down in front of her. How many times do I have to tell you? They're not my friends. Unlike us, they're Eldian devils. However, it doesn't hurt to gain their trust. Annie scoffed. Do you honestly expect me to believe that? I've watched you interacting with them. You've never been a good liar, and despite what you claim, I think deep down you know these people aren't really devils. If you wanted to keep on believing that they were nothing but devils, then you shouldn't have formed bonds with so many of them. It'll only make things harder for you. Reiner narrowed his eyes. What about you and Armin? Annie froze. What? Don't think I don't know about that. You criticize me for getting friendly with the other trainees, but you go and do the same thing. Annie opened her mouth, but closed it again without saying anything. Reiner's face darkened. At least I know where my loyalties are. Are you sympathizing with these devils? Is that why you're opposed to destroying Wall Rose? Annie scowled. No, I know my place. If you think destroying Wall Rose is what needs to be done in order for us to complete our mission and go home, then so be it. Reiner nodded. Good. Reiner's face softened. I'm sorry for putting so much pressure on you lately. He slowly stood back up. Let's leave it for tonight. We'll discuss things again tomorrow. Suddenly, they heard a twig snap a few feet away. Bertolt whirled around. What? The sound had come from a nearby patch of bushes. Reiner's heart began to race. Oh no, is someone? The three of them slowly crept toward the bushes, and a dark furry creature ran out, causing them to jump. It chattered at them indignantly before disappearing into the darkness. Reiner let out a sigh of relief. It was just a raccoon. Annie found herself laughing slightly. The scare over, the three of them began to make their way back to the barracks. Bertolt spoke up. You know, I keep having the same dream. Within the bushes, Eren let out the sigh of relief he'd been holding in. Shit, damn it. That was too close, too damn close. I can't risk doing this again. Still, I know what their plans are now, so I don't need to. So it was Reiner who suggested it. And while Annie seemed a little hesitant, she still went along with it. A little disappointing. I was hoping her bond with Armin might be enough to make her reconsider things, but I guess not. Although, she probably wouldn't voice her doubts to Reiner and Bertolt. Still, given what happened last time around, I'd better just assume that she's going to go along with Reiner's plans. If she backstabs him, that'd be nice, but I won't count on it. Now then, I need to seriously think about this. What am I going to do in Trost? Eren's thoughts kept him awake for the rest of the night, and they kept him awake for most of the following night as well. And just when he'd finally managed to fall back asleep, Eren bolted upright, and he wasn't the only one. Reiner looked out the window anxiously. That sounded like Armin, didn't it? Eren glanced over at the bed opposite him and saw that Armin wasn't there. Before long, they and several other cadets rushed outside to see what was going on. They found Armin laying face down in the ground, barely moving. Eren looked at his friend anxiously. Armin, what happened? Armin looked like he was trying to hold back tears. I was coming back from the bathroom when someone jumped me, knocked me down, and he winced in pain. It feels like they broke my leg. The gathered cadets murmured in shock. Connie looked bewildered. Who would do something like that? Reiner bent down next to Armin. Here, I'll take you over to the infirmary. Thanks. While Reiner carried Armin over to the infirmary, Eren stared after them thoughtfully. By lunchtime, everyone knew about the incident. They had been unable to find the culprit, though Shadis had assured them that they would be in a whole world of trouble if he ever found out who did it. After visiting Armin in the infirmary, Eren and Mikasa had found to their relief that it was a clean break, and so it was unlikely there would be any complications. Unfortunately, it would take several months for it to heal completely. Sasha munched on her sandwich thoughtfully. Seriously, though, who would do something like that?
Mikasa seyes darkened.
If I ever find out, I'll make them pay. Marco held up his hands. Well, it wasn't me. I would never want to get on your bad side. Jean frowned. But who could have done it? And why? Eren shrugged absently. I don't know. Eren noticed a few tables away that Reiner was staring pointedly at Annie, who was staring out the window as if to avoid eye contact with anyone. Eren raised his voice slightly. On the bright side, if the Titans attack at graduation, Armin won't have to be on the front lines. Annie's cheeks flushed slightly, and Eren grinned internally as his suspicion was confirmed. Jean scowled. Yeah, but we would, so they better not. You might be eager to die, but not all of us are.
Eren smirka.
Nah, I've still got 8 years before a Titan will eat me. So even if they do attack at graduation, I'm sure I'll be fine. Mikasa frowned, but the others laughed at his joke. Eren smiled, trying to brush aside troublesome thoughts of the future and enjoy this moment with his friends. Do you have heart? All the cadets saluted. Sir, the military officer continued. As of this moment, you have 3 options open to you.
Tose wiseli.
He spread his hands out. The garrison regiment, whose job is to reinforce the walls. The scouting regiment, who venture out into Titan territory to reclaim what was once ours. And the military police, maintaining law and order in the interior under the direction of His Majesty. He gestured toward the front row. Those cadets eligible for the military police have already been named. The rest of you take a look at them. This is the top of your class. It was the graduation ceremony, and all of the 104th Cadet members from the Southern Division were gathered. The top 10 graduates stood at the front. From left to right, highest to lowest, the top 10 were Mikasa Ackerman, Eren Yeager, Reiner Braun, Annie Leonhardt, Bertolt Hoover, Jean Kirstein, Marco Bott, Sasha Browse, Connie Springer, and Emer. Armin wasn't at all surprised that Mikasa and Eren had made it into the top 10, though he was a little surprised that they had both ranked so highly. He'd known ahead of time that he wouldn't be in the top 10, and that was fine. Eren and Mikasa were planning to join the scouts, and so Armin would be able to join with them. He just hoped he wouldn't be a burden. Armin leaned against the crutches he was using to stay upright. His leg was most of the way healed, but he still needed the crutches to get around. He felt rather self-conscious about it, as all the other cadets could remain standing just fine, but he knew there was no helping it. To his relief, the ceremony concluded a few minutes later. There was a party afterwards for the cadets to celebrate, and Armin planned to stay for a little while before turning in, as he didn't like being out and about with the crutches more than he had to be. At the party, most of the graduates were grouped together with their friends, enjoying the more luxurious food and drinks that had been provided for the occasion. As usual, though, Annie was off by herself in one of the room's corners. Armin made his way over to her, going as fast as his crutches would allow. He beamed at her. Congratulations on making it into the top 10. Annie nodded stiffly. Thanks. While she was more open when they were alone, she reverted back to her cold exterior whenever there were other people around. Although, as Armin thought about it, she'd been becoming more and more withdrawn the closer graduation became. He felt slightly uneasy. Did she not like him anymore? What was going on in her head? He smiled uncertainly. So, which branch are you joining? Annie lowered her eyes. The MPs. Oh, so you're still set on that, huh? Annie nodded. Yes. She looked at him gravely. What about you? Are you still planning to join the scouts? Armin nodded. Yeah, Eren and Mikasa are joining the scouts, so that's where I'll go as well. Annie frowned. Are you sure? I know you can't join the MPs, but you could still join the garrison. That'd be a lot safer, and you'd still be helping humanity. Armin shook his head.
No.
I want to see the outside world. I can't do that by staying cooped up inside these walls. Besides, I want to stay with my friends. He grinned. Although, if I had made it into the top 10, you can be sure I'd consider joining the MPs if it meant staying with you. Annie sighed. Yeah. She jerked her head. How's the leg? Armin grimaced. Almost healed. The doctors say it needs a week or 2 more before I try putting any weight on it. Annie's face softened. That's good. Armin opened his mouth to say something else, but paused as he noticed several graduates gathering around Eren. Annie folded her arms and watched the scene curiously, and Armin found himself watching as well. Nick looked at Eren incredulously. You're still planning to join the scouts? Even after you got into the top 10?
Eren nuda.
I made up my mind a long time ago. I didn't become a soldier to run from the Titans. I became a soldier to take back what's ours. Thomas winced. We can't beat them. He was louder than he meant to be, and the whole room quieted down as they waited for Eren's response. Eren bowed his head. Maybe we can. Maybe we can't. But we won't know unless we try. He looked at them all seriously. Do you really think the Titans will stop with Wall Maria? Unless we push back their advance, it's only a matter of time before Wall Rose and Wall Sina fall as well. And I'd sooner die than allow that to happen. Too many people have already died sacrificing their lives for the sake of humanity. It's up to us to ensure that their sacrifices weren't in vain. His expression became fierce. They gave up their lives so that we might have the chance to one day see the world beyond the walls and experience true freedom. I may not live to see that true freedom, but I'm determined to fight, so that someday, someone can. Several graduates clapped and cheered. Mikasa stared at him fondly from across the room, while Jean scowled and walked away. Annie shook her head. Well, he's certainly still got a knack for inspirational speeches. Armin nodded uneasily. Yeah. As Armin recalled, Eren had also become more and more withdrawn the closer graduation became. The last time he'd become like this had been right before the exercise when they'd been ambushed by the thieves. Armin glanced at Annie, then back at Eren. Perhaps they both sensed some big change that was coming, and coming soon. Armin just wished he knew what this change would be. The following morning, several of the graduates were stationed on the wall surrounding Trost District, tasked with cleaning the cannons and keeping watch. As Connie cleaned one of the cannons, he felt Eren's incredulous gaze on him. You're joining the scouts? But I thought you were set on joining the MPs. Thomas smirked. He was. But I think your little speech last night changed his mind. Connie glared at him. Shut up. I decided it myself. Thomas laughed. Sure.
Mina smiled.
I think a lot of people have decided to join the scouts. I'll admit, I'm a little terrified, but as you said, we'll have to face the Titans sooner or later. Eren looked at them uncertainly. Okay, just be sure you've thought it through. Connie was surprised. Eren had been the one trying to convince them to join the scouts, and now he seemed nervous that they had decided to join. Connie grimaced. Although he's seen the Titans firsthand, unlike us, he has a better idea of what he's getting into than we do. Still, as Eren said, we have to do something. I'm just glad he's here to help. Sasha walked over, one hand inside her jacket. Guys, look what I found. She held out a slab of meat. Connie's eyes widened. Sasha, are you insane? Do you want to get locked up in solitary confinement? Sasha laughed off their exclamations. It'll be fine. As soon as we retake the land, we'll have more land to grow food and raise livestock. Dolma sighed. I'd like some of the meat. Me too. Mina chirped. Connie scowled. Well, I suppose. Eren smiled. We can have it later. We have work to do. Eren walked away from the group, and Connie noticed that he looked tense, and the smile from before had looked forced. He seems nervous. I wonder why. Is it because we're joining the scouts? Or is there something else bothering him? Connie shrugged and went back to cleaning the inside of the cannon. It happened in the blink of an eye. 1 second, he could see the grassy lands of Wall Maria stretching out into the horizon, the sky nice and clear. The next second, his view was obstructed by a massive head, lacking any skin, red muscles showing, its eyes cold and calculating. Connie froze as it took him a few seconds to process that he was looking at the infamous colossal titan, and it was only a few feet away. He yelled in shock. What? The next second, a cloud of steam blew everyone off the wall. Connie hissed in pain as the hot air hit him, and he flailed in the air before the years of training kicked in and he used his gear to grapple onto the wall. After steadying himself, he was able to see that most of the other graduates had also managed to grapple themselves onto the wall. Two, however, had not. Connie looked in horror at the two unconscious graduates who were plummeting to their death.
Eren.
Thomas, Sasha, who was near where Thomas had been, released her gear, ran down the wall, and attempted to snag Thomas's leg with her hook in order to save him. The hook grazed his calf, but did not penetrate, and the young man continued to fall, the wire dangling uselessly above him. Sasha screamed. No! Connie yelled. Damn it! He looked over, trying to see if Eren was okay. He looked around frantically. Where's Eren? I don't see him. Don't tell me he's… Then he spotted the ruined gate, with debris strewn all across the ground and dust billowing out. Connie felt himself shaking slightly. They're going to get in. Again. It's happening again.
And Eren's dead.
Why? Then he remembered what Eren had said the previous night, and he tried to steel himself. He was right. It's up to us. I don't like that this has been thrust on me, but I'm not going to let his death be for nothing. Connie pulled his blades out and raised his voice to get the others' attention. Guys, the colossal titan is right in front of us. We have to take it down now. Follow me. Connie began to soar up the wall, and after a few seconds Sasha and Mina followed him as well. As they got near the top, they saw the colossal titan raising its arm up. Connie yelled, Evade! They jumped off the wall and grappled onto the colossal titan's body. The next second, the colossal titan's arm swept across the wall, knocking down all of the cannons. Connie watched the cannons fall in dismay. And I spent so much time scrubbing it too. He brushed away the absurd thought and rallied the others to go for the nape. But before they could get too close, the colossal titan let out a cloud of steam. Mina shrieked. Ow! Sasha coughed. Shit! It's hot. The next second, the steam vanished, and the colossal titan was nowhere to be seen. After grappling back onto the wall, they looked around in shock. Connie shouted, What the hell? How did that huge bastard just vanish into thin air? Disheartened, they climbed back onto the wall. A garrison soldier ran up to them. All of you, Operation Colossal Titan Response is in effect. I expect you to take part. Report to HQ. If you got close to the damn thing, we need details. The graduates all saluted. Sir, as they made their way to HQ, Connie glanced back at the ruined gate. This is bad. Another breach. How are we going to make it through this? We need a miracle. Meanwhile, on another section of wall further away from the gate, several of the other graduates witnessed the colossal titan appear and disappear. Jean's eyes were wide in disbelief. No way. Marco covered his mouth. Dear God. Mikasa looked at the wall directly above the ruined gate anxiously. That's where Eren was. A garrison soldier ran up to them, his gear in hand. All of you report to HQ. Operation Colossal Titan Response is underway. We need all the hands we can get. They all saluted. Sir, as they ran along the wall to reach the elevators, Mikasa briefly considered disobeying orders to make sure Eren was safe. After some reflection, though, she shook her head. No, I have to have faith that he's okay, and just focus on protecting the people around me right now.
Marco frowned grimly.
Looks like Eren was right. Jean grimaced. Damn it. Couldn't they have held off until we made it to the interior? Marco looked at him seriously. If they break through wall rows, what's going to stop them from breaking through wall Cena too? Jean winced. I know. It's just. Krista looked at her friend with a frown. Emer, what's with you? Aren't you worried? Mikasa glanced at the two female graduates and saw to her surprise that Emer, unlike the others, showed no signs of panic or worry at all. She didn't look happy, but she was still calm, like this was just another day. Emer smiled softly. Maybe I'm being overly optimistic, but I think we'll be okay. This isn't like 5 years ago. We're prepared. At the very least, we'll give them one hell of a fight before we let them through. Jean scowled. You almost sound like Eren. Emer's smile faded. Yeah. Emer glanced at Krista fondly. Just make sure you stay by my side, princess. Krista blushed at the nickname, but smiled back at her friend appreciatively. Mikasa looked at Emer carefully. Does she know something we don't? She's far too calm considering the circumstances. She looked back, unable to keep the worry off her face. Eren, please be safe. Eren sped alongside Wall Rose, gliding only a few yards above the ground, going as fast as his gear would allow. He'd put a hood on to try to minimize the chances of anyone recognizing him should they happen to spot him. He'd spent months analyzing possible strategies, and in the end decided to go with one of the simplest. As much as he wanted to take on the other shifters head-on, his first priority was to protect everyone inside the walls. In order to do that, he needed to seal the breach as quickly as possible. After confirming that they would follow the same course of action as last time, Eren planned to let Bertolt break the wall. As he expected, he was one of the cadets cleaning the cannons near the front gate, and so was in the perfect position to wait for Bertolt to appear. He'd calculated approximately when Bertolt would make his move, and when the time neared, he made sure to stand near the interior edge of the wall, away from the rest of the cadets. When the Colossal appeared and blasted everyone off the wall, Eren feigned having been knocked unconscious and allowed himself to plummet toward the ground as quickly as possible. Just before he hit the bottom and died, he used his gear to pull up and begin speeding alongside the wall. It was a risky move that he wouldn't have dared to try if he hadn't gone through training twice. And now he was speeding toward the boulder. While the garrison advance team had ultimately been unsuccessful at halting the Titans' advance, they had slowed it down, and the Titans hadn't entered the city immediately. So Eren's plan was to reach the boulder, transform into a Titan, pick it up, and plug the hole like he had last time, only much earlier. There were risks to the plan. There was the chance that either the garrison or the other shifters would attack him while he was carrying the boulder toward the wall. But he'd calculated that both of these were unlikely to happen. The other shifters had been very cautious last time around and had allowed the operation to take back Trost to take place without interfering. And back then, they'd had time to react to the appearance of his Titan and plan accordingly. This time, there would be almost no time for them to come up with a plan before he plugged the wall, and since they wouldn't know his identity this time, they would probably be even more cautious. Eren almost wished he could see the looks on their faces when he appeared, but of course that was impossible, so he didn't dwell on it, amusing as the idea was. As for the garrison, he was fairly certain that they would deduce what his intentions were as soon as he picked up the boulder and started walking toward the gate. Hopefully they would then prioritize keeping the normal Titans from entering the city at all costs. It wasn't a perfect plan. Something could still go wrong, and some soldiers would still have to die. But he felt that this was the course of action that best minimized the risks and loss of life, and so decided to go for it. As the boulder came into sight, Eren thought back to all the people who had died the first time around, many of whom had died because of him. His face hardened. Not this time. This time it's our turn to surprise you. Eren propelled himself forward, arced through the air toward the boulder, and bit his hand. Suddenly, an explosion of light occurred in the southeast of the city. Mikasa, Krista, Emer, Jean, Marco, and the other graduates paused and looked over to see what had caused it. Jean squinted. What the hell was that? As they tried to get a better look, they suddenly froze. Mikasa gasped. It's a Titan. Though it was too far away for them to see clearly, they could tell that it was approximately 15 meters tall, its body rippling with muscles. Marco looked alarmed. Inside the city? How? Krista peered at it carefully. It's not attacking anyone. It's carrying that boulder on its back. Marco looked at her in shock. What? Sure enough, as they looked more closely, they could see that the Titan was paying no attention to any of the humans around it. Instead, a huge boulder was resting on its shoulders, and it was slowly walking through the city with its heavy load. Jean's eyes were wide in disbelief. What the hell? Emer's eyes were wide as well, though she was less shocked than the others. So that must be Eren. Good luck. Near the gate, the captain of the garrison advance team was watching the Titan, hardly able to believe what he was seeing. That Titan, it's carrying the boulder, and it's headed this way. He looked down at the gate, then back at the Titan. Could the Titan really be? The captain raised his voice. Listen up, soldiers. Our first priority is to prevent any Titans from entering the city. Stop them at any cost, one of his subordinates protested. But what about that Titan? The captain shook his head. I don't know what's going on, but it looks like that Titan is going to try to seal the breach with that boulder. If that's the case, we must ensure it succeeds. If it becomes hostile, we can deal with that later. But we must stop their advance. Charge! Several soldiers in the advance team let out war cries and charged at the incoming Titans, using the remaining cannons to stagger the Titans and then swooping down with their gear to finish them off. The garrison captain looked at his remaining subordinates. I want your teams to keep an eye on that thing. If it attempts to attack any civilians, bring it down. But if it doesn't, keep your distance. Do not engage unless necessary. Sir, despite their best efforts, the Titans kept coming, and before long the garrison advance team was almost completely wiped out. But just as the Titans reached the net blocking the outer wall, the captain looked into the interior and was relieved to see the rogue Titan was already at the ruined gate. With an almighty roar, the Titan flung the boulder off its shoulders and sealed the breach. The captain felt his knees weaken in relief, but forced himself to remain standing. He observed the Titan in awe. It looks like the physical manifestation of humanity's rage. He caught a glimpse of its eyes and saw how expressive they were compared to the normal Titans. Is it intelligent? The Titan turned around and faced the city. It let out another roar, this time projecting across the city. The captain tensed, worried that it had finally turned hostile. The teams near the Titan had already gotten their blades out, ready if the Titan decided to attack. To his relief, though, the Titan kneeled down instead. A cloud of steam engulfed its body, and a few seconds later the steam faded away. The Titan was nowhere to be seen. The garrison soldiers were shocked at the Titan's sudden disappearance. The captain felt pretty shocked himself, but as he took in the sight of the sealed gateway, he decided that it didn't really matter. They had won. With no civilian deaths and minimal military casualties, this day belonged to humanity. He raised his voice. Operation successful. Pull back. The surviving advance team members pulled back, and all the people present, military and civilian, began to cheer. Levi soared fluidly through the air, and in one quick motion sliced out the nape of the Titan, causing it to fall. Levi landed gracefully on a nearby building and surveyed the nearby streets of the abandoned city. He remarked, "One on the right, two on the left." A moment later, several members of his squad leaped onto the roof next to him. Petra stepped forward. "Captain, the reinforcements are here." Levi nodded. "Good. Petra, tend to our comrade below. You two take out the Titan to your right. The pair on the left belongs to me." Levi leaped into the air again, and with little effort dispatched the two Titans. As he landed on the roof, he looked at his blood-soaked hand in distaste. Disgusting. After wiping his hand off with a cloth, he went down to where Petra was on the street below. One of their comrades had been in the Titan's mouth, and Petra had pulled him out after Levi had killed it. Petra looked up as Levi approached. "Captain, it looks like his ribs are broken, but he might be able to pull through. If you'd showed up a second later," the soldier gasped. "Thank you, Captain." Levi knelt down next to him. "At ease, soldier." He motioned at Petra. "Get him to the wagons." Petra nodded and lifted his body up. Hearing the sound of several horses trotting down the street, Levi turned around to see Commander Erwin and several other officers coming near.
Erwin spoke.
"Levi, we're pulling out." Petra looked at him uncertainly. "Commander," Levi frowned. "What do you mean? You damn know well that we can push further. My men didn't die just for us to turn back." Erwin shook his head. "There's a swarm of Titans moving north. They're bearing down on the city." Petra gasped, and Levi grimaced. Erwin looked north grimly. "It looks just like 5 years ago. Something tells me this is going to be bad. For all we know, the wall has already been reduced to rubble." He glanced back at them. "If that's the case, we're needed back there. If Trost has fallen, we must defend Wall Rose at all costs. Organize a retreat." Levi and Petra snapped into a salute. "Sir," Levi scowled. "Damn it." A few hours later, the scouts were riding back the way they had come, discouraged that the expedition was over before it had even really begun. The sun had made its way across the sky over the course of the day and wasn't too far away from setting. Levi found his squad riding near Hank's squad, and while he found her annoying, she did bring up some good points on occasion. Levi glanced at her. "Do you really think this will be a repeat of 5 years ago?" Hanji frowned thoughtfully. "It's hard to say. We didn't know much about Titan movement outside of the walls before Wall Maria fell. But if there's a bunch of them heading toward the city, that's a bad sign. The Titans tend to gravitate toward the outer districts, as that's where there's a large concentration of people. But usually when they can't get through the wall, most of them get bored and wander away, never too far, but just roam out here in Titan territory. If a bunch of them are heading for the city, that's a strong indication that there's been a breach that will allow them to get in." Levi glanced northward. "And the only Titans capable of such a breach," Hanji nodded, "are the colossal and armored. If they've appeared again, this is bad." Levi's grip on the reins tightened. "Well, if they have showed up, we'll at least give them some hell before we go down." Hanji put a hand to her chin. "Still, it's puzzling. Why did they wait 5 years to try again? Surely 2 or 3 would have been sufficient if their plan was to wait for enough Titans to make it through the breach in Wall Maria. Although that raises the question, what are their motivations? The colossal and the armored, unlike the normal Titans, they act with purpose, with intelligence. Do they share the same goal of destroying humanity as the rest of the Titans and are just smart enough to make it a reality? Or are they after something else?" Levi shook his head. "Who cares? All that matters is they are a threat that needs to be eliminated. And if I get the chance, I'm more than willing to take the bastards down." His face darkened. At least humans have reasons for their violent acts. But Titans, they don't gain anything from all this destruction, and yet they keep going, taking lives without a thought. It's sickening. Hanji nodded grimly. "It is unfortunate. If only there was some way we could reason with them." Levi scoffed. "Get real. Like that could ever happen. The only good Titan is a dead Titan." Hanji wagged a finger at him. "You don't know that. Until 5 years ago, if I told you there were Titans 60 meters tall out there, you would think I was nuts, yet it exists." Levi rolled his eyes. "Yeah, one exists, and as far as we know, that's the only one like it." Hanji smiled. "You never know," Petra called out. "Captain, the walls are in sight." Levi faced forward, and sure enough could see the walls in the distance. He glanced to his left and right. "It's strange. We haven't run into very many Titans on the way back, which means they're all probably at the city. This could get ugly." As they neared the city, the formation pulled closer together. As the walls of Trost came into clear view, everyone's expressions became grim. Levi scowled. "Shit, looks like Erwin was right. The gate's been destroyed, and there's a whole horde of Titans right in front of it." Hang frowned. "Wait, something's off. The Titans are just standing there. Why aren't they entering the city?" Levi looked again and could see that Hang was right. A bunch of the Titans were standing near the front gate, but none were moving forward. A few were standing right where the gate should have been, pawing at some kind of gray barrier. Levi blinked. "Wait a minute. It looks like something's blocking the hole from the other side." Hang looked impressed. "Wow, I guess the garrison somehow came up with a plan to plug the hole in case of a breach." Levi frowned. "But how?" Erwin raised his voice. "Soldiers, prepare for battle." The scouts charged head-on at the horde of Titans, a few of them starting to acknowledge their presence. Just before the scouts reached the Titans, the garrison fired a large volley of cannon fire into the horde of Titans, staggering and knocking down a large number of them. After this, the Titans were attacked on both sides, the garrison elites coming at them from the front, the scouts from the rear. Together, the two forces outnumbered the Titans, and they were able to mop up the Titans with minimal casualties. Before long, the evening was quiet once again, and the scouts were rising up the wall on the elevators the garrison had prepared for them. Erwin, Levi, and Hang were on one of the first elevators, and as they stepped onto the wall, they spotted a familiar face. Commander Pixis smiled at them. "Glad to see you all are still in one piece."
Erwin nodded.
"Likewise." Erwin gestured at the outer gate. "What happened here? I take it the colossal Titan appeared again, and it looks like the garrison engineers figured out a way to plug the breach quickly." Pixis laughed. "I wish that were the case. But as you can see, that's just not possible. Pixis gestured toward the interior side of the gate, and Erwin, Levi, and Hang looked down to see what he was referring to. Levi blinked. Whoa! Hang gaped in amazement. Wasn't that boulder in the southeast section of the town? Pixis nodded. Yes. Erwin looked at him, puzzled. How did you manage to move it so quickly? Pixis stroked his mustache. We didn't. Levi frowned. What's that supposed to mean? Pixis chuckled. Well, truth be told, all the excitement was over by the time I arrived. There wasn't much left for me to do, aside from preparing for your return, of course. Pixis's face became serious. This morning, about an hour after you all had left, the colossal titan appeared out of nowhere and destroyed the outer gate, much like it had done 5 years ago. This time, it also took out the wall-mounted cannons. Several of the newest graduates who had been cleaning the cannons rallied and tried to attack the colossal titan. However, it let out a cloud of steam, pushing them away, and disappeared as suddenly as it had appeared. Hang gasped. How? What did it look like? How hot was the steam? How did? Pixis held up a hand. As I said, I wasn't here when it happened. If you want details, you'll have to talk to those who directly observed it. Levi scowled. Hang. Just shut up until he's finished. Pixis continued. As soon as the colossal appeared, the garrison immediately got to work, blocking the gate with the iron nets we'd constructed, bringing over new cannons to replace the ones the colossal had destroyed, and of course evacuating the civilians. Pixis glanced out at Trost. However, about 10 minutes after the colossal titan disappeared, another titan appeared out of nowhere, inside the city. The scouts reacted with shock and alarm. Levi's eyes widened. What? Hang almost looked excited. Another titan? What did it look like? Erwin looked at Pixis carefully. Did it attack the city? Pixis shook his head. It was a 15-meter class, though much more muscular and fierce-looking than any normal titan. And no, it didn't attack the city, quite the opposite. It appeared in the southeast section of the city, right where that boulder was. After it appeared, it completely ignored all the civilians around it and immediately picked up the boulder. It then carried it over to the gate and sealed the breach. Thanks to the efforts of the advance team, not a single titan was able to enter the city before the breach was sealed. After it had plugged up the hole, the titan turned around, roared out at the city, and then disappeared, just like the colossal titan. There was a moment of silence while they processed this information. Naturally, Hang was the one to break the silence. A new breed of titan, and this one seems to actually be on humanity's side. Levi was trying to keep the amazement off his face. Unbelievable. Erwin looked thoughtful. This new titan, did it show aggression towards any humans? Pixis shook his head.
No.
Like I said, it ignored the civilians, and there were a few with more curiosity than sense who followed it, and it almost seemed to be trying to avoid stepping on them. Right before it disappeared, it let out a loud roar, but it didn't seem to be directed at anyone in particular. Hang wiggled in excitement. I have to find the eyewitnesses. I have so many questions. This is fucking fantastic. She took off running. Her subordinate Moblet began chasing after her. Hang, wait! Levi felt a twinge of amusement as Moblet ran after her, which faded after he looked back down at the boulder. Well, I'll be humanity's first victory, and it's achieved with the help of our worst enemy. Erwin frowned. Perhaps. Still, there's a lot about this that doesn't make any sense. Pixis nodded. I agree. Perhaps we could discuss it more tomorrow? I'm sure you all must be tired from your excursion. Erwin agreed. Right? As they dispersed and went down the elevators into the city, Levi found his thoughts churning. Damn 4 eyes. Turns out she's right. Looks like not all of the Titans are evil monsters. But that just raises even more questions. What the hell are they? What do they want? Emer looked around the room, feeling amused. After the unexpected victory against the Titans, there were several celebrations going on throughout Trost, and many of the graduates were attending one near the inner gate. A few tables away, Emer could see Eren, Mikasa, and Armin. Eren's head was bandaged, and Armin and Mikasa were fretting over him. Mikasa more than Armin. Eren had been winded by the colossal Titan's steam, and just barely managed to use his gear to pull up before he fell to his death. However, as he was pulling up, he hit a nearby building, banging his head, and was knocked unconscious. By the time he came to, all of the excitement was over, or at least that's what he'd told everyone, and most people seemed to buy his story. But Emer was fairly certain that he was leaving out a few key details. She decided not to say anything, though. After all, Eren had just saved the city, and he'd kept his word and not revealed either her secret or Historia's secret to anyone else. A moment later, Historia came up to Emer. She smiled. "Here, I got us some more drinks." Emer accepted the mug gratefully. "Thanks." Historia looked at Emer shyly. I was going to check to make sure Eren's okay. I mean, we do owe him." Emer shrugged. "Knock yourself out." Historia walked over to Eren, Mikasa, and Armin and began chatting with them. Emer thought about joining her when she noticed Jean sitting by himself at the table next to hers. Unlike everyone else, he didn't look too happy or excited. Deciding to see what was bothering him, she slid over next to him. He looked at her in surprise. Emer smirked. "So, crazy day, and right in your hometown, huh?" Jean shrugged and took a sip from his drink. Emer's smile faded. "Something wrong?" Jean looked down seriously. "It's just that new Titan. Its eyes. They looked, I don't know how to say it, fierce? Intense?" Emer suggested. Jean nodded. "Yeah. While it didn't attack anyone, it looked angry. Not at us, but at the other Titans." Emer laced her fingers behind her head. "So what's your point?" Jean grimaced. "It's just, I've seen that look only once before. It was in Eren's eyes, right before he killed the thief 2 years ago. In both cases, the eyes burned with a primal anger. And it just made me wonder." Emer spoke. "What? Are you suggesting that Eren is the Titan that carried the boulder?" She abruptly burst out laughing and slapped him on the back. "Boy, you sure are full of some crazy ideas. What are you going to do next? Say I'm a Titan in disguise or something?" Jean chuckled reluctantly. "Yeah, I guess it was a pretty stupid thought. As if Eren could turn into a Titan or something." Emer shook her head. "It's ridiculous. I'd expect something like that from Connie, or maybe Sasha. But I thought you." Jean held up his hands. "Okay, you've made your point." His expression became serious. "It just seems odd though. Where did that Titan come from? And why did it help us?" Emer shrugged and took another sip from her drink. "I'm sure we'll find out in due time." Jean glanced away uneasily. "Yeah." Jean got up and walked away, still looking troubled. Seeing his friend was by himself, Marco walked over to him and initiated a conversation. Near the center of the room, Connie was surrounded by a bunch of the other graduates. Mildly curious, Emer started to listen in. "At first I was frozen in fear, but then I remembered Eren's speech from last night. I tried to pull myself together and called for the others to help me in trying to take down the Colossal." Hannah looked amazed. "Wow, that's incredible," Nick asked. "Who else helped you?" Sasha raised her hand. "I did."
Mina smiled.
"So did I." Connie nodded. Everyone else was frozen in fear. "I can't say I blame them." He lowered his eyes. "Well, everyone except Eren and Thomas. Eren managed to save himself in the nick of time, but Thomas didn't make it." The cheerful atmosphere deflated a little as they considered the lives that had been lost. Franz looked at the ground sadly. "It's weird. This is clearly a victory for humanity, yet someone still had to die." Hannah wrapped her arm around his and gave him a comforting squeeze. In the background, Emer heard the front door burst open, but the chatter inside the room was loud enough that no one else seemed to notice. Nick nodded grimly. "Yeah, I heard the garrison advance team was almost completely wiped out while trying to prevent the Titans from entering the city." Connie sighed. "Yeah, when you think about it, we didn't do much. Sure, we tried to take down the Colossal, but we failed, and all the real work was done by the garrison and that rogue Titan." Without warning, a woman with glasses rushed forward, getting right in Connie's face, causing him and everyone around him to step back. Hang looked at Connie with excitement. "Did you just say the rogue Titan? So you're one of the graduates who saw the Colossal Titan up close? And you also saw the new Titan that sealed the breach?" Connie nodded slowly, slightly unnerved by her enthusiasm. Yeah," Hang shrieked in excitement, causing everyone nearby to flinch at the sudden noise. "I have so many questions. What did it look like? How fast did it move? What differences and similarities did you note between it and a normal Titan? How did? Connie held up a hand. Whoa, slow down. Also, are you talking about the Colossal or the new Titan? Ymir chuckled to herself as Connie was interrogated by the Titan-obsessed scout. As she glanced around the room, though, she noted several graduates who were not present. That's strange. Where are Annie, Bertolt, and Reiner? While most of the graduates were in high spirits, 3 of them were not. Instead of joining the celebrations taking place in the buildings below, they had convened on one of the rooftops where they would not be overheard. Annie was still in shock. She'd expected something to go wrong, something unexpected to occur. That was why she had injured Armin, so that he would be safely away from the front lines when they attacked Trost, and she wouldn't have to be responsible for his death, or at least directly responsible. But another Titan appearing, and completely ruining their plan right after it had been set in motion was the last thing she had been expecting. The image of the Titan was burned into her memory. A primal anger seemed to emanate from it, and the fire in its eyes was so intense it frightened her a little. While most of the people were unsure why the Titan had roared at the city after it had sealed the breach, Annie had a feeling that it was directed at them. It was a warning to back off or face the consequences. After several moments of silence, Bertolt tentatively spoke. Do you think that could have been Marcel's Titan? Reiner shook his head. No. The largest jaw Titan known was about 7 meters, while that Titan was 15 meters. No, this is a different Titan. Annie swallowed nervously. You don't think it's the founding Titan, do you? Reiner shook his head slowly.
No.
If the founding Titan had acted, it could have just forced all of the normal Titans to leave or made them die. This Titan had to manually pick up the boulder and use it to seal the breach. He lightly punched the nearby wall, his expression anxious. Shit, Annie asked quietly. What's our next move? Reiner sighed. I don't know. This complicates things, to say the least. All this time, there was another Titan lurking inside the walls besides us and the founder. Annie thought back to the many conversations she'd had with Armin. A few had been about Eren, and how Armin thought some details about Eren's story regarding the thieves didn't add up. She hadn't really given it much thought before, but looking back, it wouldn't be that hard for a Titan to kill a group of people, and then make it look like an avalanche was the cause of death. Could Eren be? Reiner looked at her uncertainly. Annie froze momentarily before shaking her head. Just thinking.
Iduptites Eren.
Sure, he's tough, but where would he even get that power? His family is dead, and even if his family had the power, they probably would have used it to defend Shiganshina after Bertolt destroyed the outer gate. But they didn't. Besides, surely he would share something like that with his best friend. She dismissed the idea. It's possible, but unlikely. She cleared her throat. This new Titan must be the Attack Titan, the power that's been missing for the past 100 years. Reiner nodded. Yeah. Now the real question is, has this power been within the walls all this time? Or did the power holder infiltrate the walls like we did? Annie frowned. If it's the former, why didn't they stop the attack on Wall Maria 5 years ago? Reiner leaned against the wall with a sigh. It's possible they weren't expecting it. Or maybe they weren't there until it was too late. Bertolt looked down gravely. We don't know. We have no way of knowing who it is. Reiner folded his arms. I wouldn't say that, but you do have a point. Whoever this was, they must have been preparing for us to attack Wall Rose for years now. It's most likely someone who lives in Trost, or possibly someone who is a part of the military. Annie grimaced. So, what do we do now? Reiner tilted his head thoughtfully. Obviously, we can't risk trying to break down Wall Rose again. Not without knowing who this new Titan is, and what they're capable of. He stood back up. You two join the military police. Try to investigate and learn what you can about where the founding Titan is. Meanwhile, I'll join the scouts. Bertolt looked at him uncertainly. Why? Reiner explained. When they go on one of their missions beyond the walls, I'll take that opportunity to slip away and head back to Shiganshina. From there, I'll try to get in contact with Marley to ask for help. Annie and Bertolt looked at Reiner in surprise. Reiner frowned grimly. With the military here, and the Attack Titan lurking around somewhere, there's only so much the 3 of us can do. But if Zeke and Peak joined us, we'd be able to accomplish more, and have more backup if our cover is blown. Besides, it's been 5 years. They should get an update on what's going on in the walls. Annie nodded. All right, sounds like a plan. But be careful. Reiner smiled half-heartedly. Don't worry, I will be. A little while later, they all dispersed. Reiner went one way, while Annie found herself walking beside Bertolt back to the barracks. Bertolt glanced at the building where the other graduates were celebrating. He spoke quietly. It's strange. We failed, and yet I almost feel relieved. Annie finished. Bertolt paused. Annie glanced back at him. I know what you mean. Bertolt gave a small nod and brushed past her. And Annie could tell he was trying to hold back tears. It was strange. Their plan had failed, and more obstacles had appeared in their way. Yet Annie took a small amount of comfort in the knowledge that, at least for now, they weren't even bigger mass murderers than they already were. She slowly made her way back to the female barracks, a solitary tear trailing down her cheek. The following day, Pixis and Erwin met on top of the wall again, directly above the outer gate. Pixis smiled brightly at the scout's leader. Morning, Commander Erwin. Would you like a drink? Erwin shook his head. No thanks. They looked down at the boulder. A number of garrison soldiers and construction workers were working around the boulder to reinforce it and keep people from getting too close. A few yards away, several wall cultists were in a heated argument, with the presence of the garrison soldiers possible being the only thing preventing it from escalating into violence. Pixis smirked. Heh, look at them down there. Some are saying the new Titan was a blessing from the goddesses of the walls, rewarding the faithful of Trost by saving their home from the invading Titans. Others think the new Titan is a demon who dared to set foot inside the walls and desecrate the walls, and is a sign of the end times unless we repent. Erwin looked down at the religious zealots indifferently. Neither explanation seems very likely to me. Pixis shook his head, his expression becoming more serious. No, nor to me. While the Titans seem to appear and disappear from nothing, obviously they came from somewhere. He glanced at Erwin. I looked through the reports from all the garrison soldiers who were here during the attack. One of them mentioned that they briefly saw a strange soldier wearing a cloak that concealed their face zooming alongside the outer wall with ODM gear. And this happened moments after the colossal Titan disappeared. Erwin glanced at the east end of the city. I had my people interview some of the citizens who witnessed the rogue Titan carrying the boulder. Two of them mentioned that they saw someone speeding along the wall just a few yards above the ground, also using ODM gear. And this was a few moments before the rogue Titan appeared. Pixis smiled grimly. So, you've come to the same conclusion? Erwin met his gaze. Yes, either there are humans who are capable of transforming into Titans, or there are Titans capable of disguising themselves as human. And these beings, whatever they are, they have infiltrated our military. He glanced behind them, catching a glimpse of the lands beyond Wall Rose. 5 years ago, everything was chaos. If a few people who weren't from the walls at all slipped into Wall Rose along with the other refugees, would anyone be able to tell the difference? Pixis shook his head. No. So, anyone who was a part of the military before Wall Maria fell should be in the clear, but unfortunately that doesn't narrow it down very much. Erwin faced forward again. This new Titan, we don't know what its motives are, whether it's trying to protect humanity, or whether it's simply opposing the other Titans. Either way, though, we have a common enemy. And if we could work together, Pixis stroked his mustache thoughtfully. Having that Titan on our side would certainly be a great boon to humanity. But how do you propose we would draw them out of hiding? Erwin smiled knowingly. I have a few ideas. It was the night of the ceremony of choosing. Apart from the flickering torches scattered throughout the area, the only other source of light was the stars above them. Eren faced the stage, feeling oddly calm. While he hadn't actually been present the first time around, he was fairly sure that his friends and comrades looked less fearful than they had when they joined the scouts before. The Battle of Trost may have given them valuable experience when it came to facing the Titans, but losing that experience seemed a small price to pay when Eren considered all the people who still lived, and who would otherwise have perished if he hadn't intervened. Eren glanced around. Mikasa was standing right next to him. Nearby, Armin was quietly conversing with Annie. Eren had a feeling that Annie was trying one last time to convince Armin to join the garrison. Eren smiled sadly. It was a shame. It was clear that Annie did care about Armin, but not enough to change sides. If only there was some way around further conflict. Several officers of the Survey Corps stepped up to the side of the stage, and one man Eren recognized right away walked up to the center, getting the attention of all the gathered graduates. Erwin raised his voice. "Greetings. I am Erwin Smith, commander of the Survey Corps, also known as the Scouting Regiment. Tonight, you all decide which branch of the military you will join. I am here to ask you to join the Scouts. To be blunt, we need all the recruits we can get. Over the past 4 years, 60% of our forces have perished in our expeditions beyond Wall Rose. That's a horrifying figure. In addition, the recent attack on Trost has rendered the battalion route we've been establishing for the past 4 years completely useless to us. However, the recent attack also gave us a new hope, namely, the Rogue Titan." The graduates murmured at the mention of their unlikely savior. "This is so weird," Eren thought. "I saw him die, and yet here he is, perfectly fine. I know that's to be expected since I've gone back in time, but it's still strange." He grimaced. "I just hope he doesn't have to die this time around as well." Erwin continued. "For the past 100 years, we've learned very little about the true nature of our enemy, but over time we've discovered more and more. 5 years ago, we learned that there are titans that possess intelligence, and that seek to destroy humanity, and have the strength to do so. I am, of course, referring to the colossal and armored titans. However, last week we learned that there are intelligent titans who are not enemies of humanity. Such a thing would have been completely inconceivable not that long ago, but countless eyewitnesses can attest to the existence of the Rogue Titan, and its heroic actions that prevented the Titan assault before it could even begin. What this Titan's motives are, however, is still unknown. We don't know if it is trying to protect humanity, or if it is simply opposing the other Titans. Either way, it could prove to be an invaluable ally." Out of the corner of his eye, Eren noticed Armin perk up, as if the commander's words made him consider something. The other graduates once again began to murmur among themselves. Eren had to hold back a smile. "Yeah, that Titan would be a good ally, and soon you'll have him." Erwin spoke up again once the murmurings had subsided. "Therefore, the number one priority of the Scouts right now is to try to find this Titan. While its intentions differ from the other intelligent Titans, we believe its nature and capabilities to be similar. However, at this point there is still much we don't know about the Titans, and so we need all the help we can get in tracking this Rogue Titan down. If you wish to join us, to dedicate your hearts and give your lives for humanity, then remain here. Those of you who wish to join a different branch are dismissed." While some were mildly curious about the Rogue Titan, most of the graduates had little interest in joining the Scouts, and the 60% mortality rate Erwin had admitted to didn't help matters. As expected, most of the people began to leave. Eren subtly watched to see who would leave and who would stay. His eyes widened. "Wait, Jean and Marco are leaving?" "That's right." It was Marco's death and his first-hand experience against the Titans that pushed Jean into joining the Scouts. But neither of those things happened this time, so naturally he's following his original plan. Oh well. He glanced over to where Reiner and Bertolt had been standing, and froze. "Hold on, Reiner's still here, but where's Bertolt? Don't tell me. Both Annie and Bertolt are joining the MPs this time? Damn it. I knew some things would be different, but still, this is unfortunate. I'll have to rethink some of my plans." He looked around. Now, who is staying? Mikasa and Armin, obviously. There's Connie and Sasha. Emer and Historia are still here. And this time, Mina, Nick, and Myliers. Thomas still died, but at least these three have a chance to live a full life. Erwin looked at the dozen or so that were left carefully. "If you were ordered to die, could you do it?" Eren spoke up. "Yes, death is coming for me soon anyways." The others looked at him in shock. While he had joked about being killed by Titans countless times throughout training, this was the first time that he had said it with this level of conviction. Mikasa looked slightly concerned.
Eren.
Erwin smiled softly. "I see. Of course. Let us hope it doesn't come to that." He looked at them all seriously. "Those of you who remain, I would like to welcome you to the Scout Regiment. This is a genuine salute. Together we give our hearts." Erwin saluted, and everyone else responded with their own salute. "Sir," Eren glanced at Reiner. "Well, for most of us it's a genuine salute." Erwin lowered his arm. "Those of you standing here, you have worked through your fears, and for that each one of you has my respect." He began to walk off the stage. "Your training begins tomorrow. Be up bright and early, sir." With that, the ceremony came to a close, and everyone began to disperse. Eren remained where he was though. He spoke quietly. "You guys go on without me." Mikasa looked at him in concern. Eren avoided their gaze. "There's something I want to ask Commander Erwin about." Armin frowned uncertainly. "What is it?" Eren smiled half-heartedly. "I'll tell you later. It's nothing important." Biggest lie of the century. Armin hesitated. "Okay." Mikasa and Armin reluctantly left, with Mikasa hovering near Armin to make sure he stayed standing. While his leg was most of the way healed, and he no longer needed crutches, Armin's leg still wasn't quite back to normal. After making sure that everyone, in particular Reiner, was gone, Eren walked over to where Erwin and several of the scouts were standing. Eren felt a slight chill in his stomach as he noticed Petra, feeling a mixture of happiness and regret as he recalled what had happened the last time he saw her. He tried to avoid showing any of these emotions on his face, though. Erwin glanced at him. "Is there something you need?" Eren saluted, trying to suppress the nervousness he suddenly felt. "Yes, sir. There's something I need to talk to you about, privately, where no one else can overhear us." The other scouts looked at him curiously, while Erwin was scrutinizing him.
Erwin nodded.
"Very well." A little while later, they had gone up one of the elevators near the edge of Trost and were on top of the wall. Erwin glanced down into the city. "This should be fairly private. It's highly unlikely anyone will be able to eavesdrop on us up here." Erwin looked at him seriously. "So, what was it you wanted to discuss with me?" Eren swallowed, trying to make his face appear blank. "Earlier, you asked us if we were prepared to give our lives for humanity. I'd like to ask you the same thing. Are you willing to risk your life in order to protect the people of the walls? Are you prepared to do what is necessary for our survival, even if it means facing unknown dangers or even rebelling against the government?" Erwin was silent for a moment. "I am prepared to do whatever it takes to ensure mankind's future. If rebelling against the government is necessary to achieve this, then so be it." "Very well." Eren gazed off into the distance. The following conversation never happened. "If anyone asks, you will tell them that I told you how I witnessed my mother's death during the initial breach 5 years ago, and was asking about your experiences as a scout in order to strengthen my resolve." Erwin considered this for a moment before nodding. "Fine. So, what was it you wanted to tell me?" Eren let out a deep breath. "Here goes. I was the Titan that carried the boulder that day." Erwin's eyes widened, but he managed to keep his expression relatively neutral. "I see. Are you human or a Titan?" Eren shook his head. "I am a human with the power of the Titans. There are 9 people like me in this world, and they are the key to what is happening right now." Eren paused before beginning his story. Centuries ago, the power of the Titans was under the control of a nation known as the Eldian Empire. They used this power to maintain control and order, and often used it to ruthlessly crush their enemies. Eventually, the Eldians began fighting amongst themselves, and this was their downfall. The Marlians, one of the races that had been subjugated by the Eldians, saw the chance to overthrow their oppressors, and with the help of a sympathetic Eldian family in possession of one of the Titan powers, the Marlians successfully destroyed the Eldian Empire. Erwin remained silent, which Eren was grateful for. The Marlians gained control of 7 of the Titan powers. Of the remaining 2, 1 was lost. The other belonged to the King of Eldia. This power was known as the Founding Titan, and it is by far the most powerful and the most dangerous. With this power, the wielder can create and control Titans at will. After the Empire collapsed, the king moved as many Eldians as he could off the main continent and onto the nearby island of Parity. He then used his Titan power to create millions of colossal Titans, and used them to construct 3 massive walls: Maria, Rose, and Sina. Erwin looked at him sharply. "Wait, are you saying?" Eren glanced at the wall beneath their feet. "Yes. Inside the walls, these Titans lie dormant even to this day." Erwin glanced down, looking slightly nervous for the first time. Eren continued. "After building the walls, the king turned Parity into a hermit kingdom, cut off from the rest of the world. In order to guarantee a temporary peace for the people inside the walls, the king left behind a warning to the rest of the world. He said that if his peace was ever disturbed, he would unleash the Wall Titans and use them to trample the earth. Erwin spoke quietly. So, we're not the last of humanity. Eren shook his head.
No.
Far from it. And these other nations, they see us as a threat because of the king's warning 100 years ago. Yes, Erwin looked thoughtful. So that's why they attacked Wall Maria. But why would they risk angering the king's descendants if it could mean the destruction of the world? Eren continued. There are a few reasons. First of all, they believe that parity is a ticking time bomb, and that it's only a matter of time before the Wall Titans are released. Consequently, they want to eliminate this threat. The other reason is they want to recover the founding Titan. While Marley has managed to stay a world superpower because of the power of the Titans, the world is changing. It won't be long before conventional weapons will surpass the power of the Titans. In order to maintain their position in the world, they need to take back the founding Titan. Erwin frowned. I see. But why haven't the king's descendants done anything? If the founding Titan can control other Titans, they could have used this power to make the Titans leave Wall Maria, or prevented them from entering in the first place. Why did they do nothing?
Eren grimasa.
Because of a vow the king made 100 years ago. While he threatened to trample the world, this was never his true intention. It was merely an empty threat meant to buy himself a temporary peace. Before inheriting the founding Titan, the king lamented the cruel history of the Eldian Empire and all the people that had been slain by the Titans. After inheriting the founding Titan, the king set into motion the events that led to the destruction of the Eldian Empire and gave power to the Marleyans, who had been oppressed by his people for so long. He then created this walled kingdom and made a vow renouncing war. The founding Titan's true power can only be used by one of royal blood. But because of the vow the king made, all of his descendants who inherit the power of the founding Titan cannot use it, as they are bound by his will. The king knew that sooner or later the walls would be attacked, and he planned to allow everyone inside the walls to die in order to atone for all the bloodshed the Eldian Empire had caused in the past. Erwin's face became grave as he processed what Eren was saying and the implications. After a moment, he asked, "Did the king erase the people's memories?"
Eren nudda.
Yes. In order to guarantee peace within the walls and to keep the people in the dark, he stole away their memories of the outside world and led them to believe that they were the last of humanity in a world that had been overrun by Titans. Erwin smiled bitterly. So, my father was right. Erwin glanced at Eren uncertainly. But how do you know all of this? And where did you get your power? Eren lowered his eyes. My father. He looked down at his right hand. I was born and raised within the walls, but my father came from outside the walls using the Lost Titan power, the power of the Attack Titan. Shortly after Wall Maria fell, I inherited his Titan along with his memories. Erwin looked curious. Who was your father?
Eren respunda.
My father, Grisha Jaeger, was born and raised in one of the internment zones in Marley that is designated for Eldians. While Marleyans were once oppressed by the Eldian Empire, the situation has reversed, and the Marleyans now brutally oppress the Eldians, only keeping them around for their Titan abilities. Erwin blinked. Titan abilities?
Eren nudda grimly.
Yes, only Eldians can become Titans and possess the power of the Titans. Yes, Titans, all of them. They were once human. Erwin's eyes widened, and he glanced away. So all this time, Eren bowed his head. When my father was very young, his sister was murdered by Marleyan officers. But because she was an Eldian, there was no justice for his sister's killers. Years later, he joined a rebel group known as the Eldian Restorationists, with the goal of bringing back the Eldian Empire. A key part of their plan involved trying to invade the walls before Marley could in order to take back the founding Titan. He looked at Erwin seriously. You see, the rest of the world doesn't know that the king erased our memories. They view us as dangerous devils who are a threat to the entire world. Erwin frowned. So, was it the Eldian Restorationists who attacked Wall Maria? Eren shook his head. No. Before they could put their plan into motion, they were betrayed. They were given the worst sentence an Eldian criminal could be given. They were brought to the edge of Parity Island and turned into Titans, doomed to forever wander the lands outside the walls in a kind of purgatory. However, before my father was turned into a Titan, a double agent named the Owl killed all of the Marleyan officers. He did this by using the power of the Attack Titan. He then told my father to sneak into the walls and take back the Founding Titan before Marley did. My father then inherited the Attack Titan and snuck into the walls. Eren's gaze became melancholy. There, he met my mother, got married, and had me. All the while he investigated, trying to find where the Founding Titan was. Erwin looked thoughtful. But if the Founding Titan is being held by the royal family, then shouldn't the king or one of his family members hold the power? Eren shook his head.
No.
The current king is a fraud, a figurehead to hide the identity of the true ruler of the walls. The one who holds the power of the Founding Titan is a man named Rod Rice. Erwin looked at Eren sharply. The noble
Eren know that.
After Wall Maria was breached, my father confronted Rod Rice and pleaded with him to use his power to stop the invading Titans before the people of the walls were devoured. But Rod Rice, bound by the vow of pacifism, refused. My father then transformed into a Titan and tried to take it by force. He ultimately failed and Rod Rice fled. But my father learned that while Rod Rice could transform into a Titan, he could not use the full power of the Founding Titan because of the vow-renouncing war. If taken by surprise, the Attack Titan could easily subdue the Founding Titan in its current state.
Eren grimasa.
After this, my father gave the Attack Titan to me and entrusted me with seeing his mission through. Erwin looked puzzled. But why? How old were you when he gave you this power? Eren winced. 10. Erwin repeated. He couldn't have finished his mission himself?
Eren siga. No.
When it comes to the power of the Titans, it's best described as a curse. The original Titan shifter, the progenitor Titan, died 13 years after she gained her power. No one's power can surpass hers, so everyone who inherits the power of the Titans will die 13 years after they inherit it. And my father's 13 years were almost up. Erwin's eyes widened. But doesn't that mean? Eren looked down at his right hand again. I have about 8 years left. Erwin was silent for a moment, a slight twinge of sympathy on his face. Eren found himself unable to meet his gaze. Erwin asked, "Do you know anything about the Titans who attacked Wall Maria?" Eren frowned darkly. "Yes, in fact, I know who they are." Erwin's eyes widened in astonishment. "You do?" Eren looked down.
Rainer Brown.
Bertolt Hoover, Annie Leonhardt. They say they came from a small isolated village in the south of Wall Maria. But this is a lie. They actually came from beyond the walls, just as my father did, and attacked Wall Maria because they were ordered to buy Marley. Eren looked up at Erwin. I'd suspected them for some time, but I became certain that it was them after I managed to eavesdrop on a conversation where they went over their plans to attack Wall Rose. Erwin looked at him seriously. Do they know about you? Eren shook his head. Well, obviously after what I did, they know about my Titan. But no, I don't think they know my identity. Erwin glanced away, his face flashing with conflicting emotions. This is a lot to take in. Eren smiled softly.
Ujan imagine.
My father didn't explain much before he gave me his power. A lot of this I've had to piece together over time.
Erwin met Erens case.
I appreciate that you felt you could entrust me with this knowledge. I'll be honest, after the attack on Trost, I'd begun to suspect that there were humans who could turn into Titans, and I was hoping that I could draw them out by indirectly asking for their help through that speech I gave. I never expected it to work right away, though. By coming to me, you've made my job a lot easier, and I can personally guarantee your safety, and I will keep your secret from all except a few of my most trusted subordinates.
Eren know that.
Thank you. Even before I inherited my father's mission, I wanted to join the Scouts, because I wanted to see the world beyond the walls. Erwin smiled. With your help, that could become a reality. Of course, I'll want to look into things and see if the facts match up with your story.
Eren saruged.
I understand. I'll only ask that you refrain from going after the other Titan shifters just yet, as we'll need to be careful when it comes to their capture. Erwin nodded. That's reasonable. I'm sure I'll think of more questions, but for now I'd just like you to answer one more. Can you prove that you have the power of the Titans, as you put it? Eren reached into his pocket. Yes. Eren pulled out a small knife and dug the blade across his palm. A few seconds later, the flesh stitched itself back together. Erwin looked amazed. Steam. Just like.
Eren know that.
A titan. Erwin reached out and clasped Eren's hand. Well, welcome to the Scouts, Eren Yeager. And that's it for today's video. I really appreciate you all taking the time to watch and join me on this journey. Your support means a lot, and it's what keeps me motivated to keep creating. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like and subscribe if you haven't already. Every bit of support helps. Feel free to drop your thoughts or any suggestions for future stories in the comments. I love reading them and getting your feedback. Thanks again for being part of the community, and I'll see you in the next one.